quickly take you, right? So I'm quickly going to take you bit by bit, right? This is little bit we need to actually try and understand, because if foreign policy is all about, or international studies is all about, yeah, some decision making uh, to achieve certain interest, then the system is what needs to be understood properly. Mind you, the system has two objectives always. Any system has two objectives. One is it should actually make sure that the output is always there, the efficiency is always there. That is what the objective of the system is, which means it needs to work for a purpose. That is what the objective is. So that is the objective of any system. You take even our own body system, we are on online mode or quarantine mode because we don't want, we want the system to function. Second is, right, the objective of the system is it should not collapse. That is, again, you can take the analogy of this quarantine or whatever. We don't want to actually die or get into any kind of ill health. So these are the two objectives always for the system. So that's how David Easton is very important, because the framework that he has given, you can fit in anywhere, international system or social system or family system or the political system, you can fit in anywhere, and you can easily explain things or you can easily understand things. End of the day, we understanding is very, very important. And that is where the objective of writing or speaking or whatever comes, right? Because the way you make others understand, the simple you make others understand, that is the intellectual. So the more you become intellectual, the less you make things the less you make things complicated. This is what it is. So in that context, you can see here, I already told you, inputs means there are two things, demands and supports. Demands means what from the system, what you want. What do you want? You may want certain resources, you want certain facilities, or you want certain benefits. That is how you place to the system, either that be family system or political system. We just place it. Inputs has two sections or two parts. One is demands and supports. Now there are demands to the system, but that demands will be met as long as you have support, you have resources. For instance, the demand is for infrastructure, either that be health infrastructure or in terms of roads and bridges, or even educational infrastructure. That can be met only when you have resources, only when you have strong will, right, to fulfill all those things. And those are all resources or wherewithal to meet those demands are called as supports. Hope you understand. Even your tax money, right? Even your in terms of somebody is coming and giving you ideas, right? In terms of, okay, this is how you should go about. All those come into supports, right? Right. So you can see this NRC, right? Both for and against, or Article 370 for and against, right? So this is how supports and demands need to be seen. You got it? I will go into a bit of details in the sense, but all decisions are made by keeping in mind only inputs. That's what I'm going to touch on. This is where, for instance, my output, for instance, I'm consulting you because you are the stakeholder. Suppose if I arbitrarily decide, right? If I arbitrarily suppose I'm the system, right? I'm making a decision, right? We are the class, right? Class is the system. Suppose if I arbitrarily make a decision without consulting you, what happens? Which means I'm not considering the input. I'm thinking that I know better. You are immaterial to me. I make it, right? And I make a decision. For instance, 2 hours continuously class or no class, whatever. I give that as an output. What will happen? So this is how, right? For instance, if there is excessive demand, this is what I wanted. Anyway, I will come to it. This is the point next is, if there is excessive demand. So that's what I want to actually connect these two parts of inputs, demands and supports. If suppose people are making a lot of demands, right? In terms of volume, too much of demands, intensity, right? Like this should be done in this particular manner this much of okay urgency, in the sense it should be done by today only, right? Your volume may be less, but in terms of intensity and urgency, if it is too much, the the system cannot deliver. That's why you can see many times, even in our electricity, it trips, right? For instance, even your this thing, the whatever the data, right? Cisco takes a lot of data, WebEx takes a lot of data, which means what? It is excessive demand, more than what you can actually. Actually, I'm getting displayed. It's poor network, something like that, right? Because the system demands, or the whatever the classes demand more, or the WebEx demands more. That's why most of the times you are going out of the network, isn't it? So in terms of volume or intensity, it actually getting more. That's why it's known as overload, right? That's why we have, even in our electrical system, you have known as the tripping. Suppose if it is excess load, it automatically trips. Otherwise, what happens if there is no trip system? Those days there were no trip system. When I actually witnessed it, I have seen both the systems. Those days, no trip system. As a result, what happens? The wire gets heated and it results in fire, right? So this is how it is. So either that be volume or intensity or urgency, when demands are higher, it becomes overload, and that may result in the tripping. And this is the reason why any ideal system has certain mechanisms to make sure that overload is reduced. So this is part of the structural mechanism itself, where the demands are filtered out before feeding into the system, right? The demands are filtered by who is known as gatekeepers. For instance, if when I was working in bureaucracy, we get a lot of calls, but all calls, they don't come directly to us. So there is somebody known as our PA. They take the call and they check whether the call is genuine or not. If at that level he wants to divert to somebody, he or she wants to divert to somebody, some section, he or she diverts. Only important call comes to us. Otherwise, what happens? We had to attend all the calls 24/7, right? So this is known as, one mechanism is structural mechanism, where somebody called as gatekeepers, right? They check on it. Even if you want to meet some VIP, right? There is a gatekeeper or gatekeepers. You cannot just let that go. Otherwise, what happened? There will be a deluge of people will be there, even that be cine stars or elite or whoever it be, right? It will be a problematic. That's why any efficient system creates their own structural mechanisms to filter it out. This is one. And secondly, cultural mechanism. So suppose there is a demand that comes saying that we have to wear a particular kind of, right, dress or something, or we have to eat a particular kind of food, right? Because I went to US or I went somewhere. I'm sorry to say like this. I shouldn't be saying like that, but generally, right? Just to make a point, right? So we want to do exactly like that, or that education system is better. We want to do like that. Or I saw somewhere, I think they follow this kind of anti-immigration one. We should also follow same policy. If demand comes like that, what we usually do is, in general, certain the cultural arguments. Oh, that does not suit our culture. Even in our family, somebody can share your experience on that. Many times our parents would say that, oh, mama or papa, we say that my friend is doing like this. We should also do like that. They are okay. They are wearing like this. They are eating like this. You can relate it, right? How the communities or the countries try and use this as something like that, right? Where one example I would say, we usually say for migration or anti-migration, we say that Vasudeva Kudumbakam. That concept we try and use, right? Saying that we should actually try and give asylum to people, right? So that is culturally compatible for us or incompatible for us. These are the various arguments being used. And then you have something known as, where if you see, they keep on drilling in your minds, saying that something is good or not good, right? You watch Doordarshan or you watch, anyway, now most of the channels have become like Doordarshans, maybe except NDTV or something like that. I don't know, right? Where towing the government line or towing opposition lines, everybody has one channel or the other where through this, either through word of mouth or through social media or through mainstream media or through textbooks also, where they clearly communicate that this is how you should place demands. This is how. Unconsciously, they won't be using the demand, but they would be telling you that this is how you should behave. This is how you should behave, and beyond that you should not make demands and things like that, right? And then in terms of how you reduce it, compromising, right? So you place some 100 demands. Okay, I want 6-lane road, right? A village goes to protest saying that we want 6-lane road. Then there is a kind of compromise and talks and saying that we will give you 2-lane road. No, that's not possible. We asked for 6. Okay, we will give you 4-lane road, right? And of course that will become 2.5 lane or 3 lane or 3.5. That's a different story. The system also tries this reduction process. So basically, to avoid overload, you have the what is known as structural mechanism, cultural, communication, and reduction. Any regime that continues to fulfill the demand will have the support of the people, right? Sometimes you can see UPA 2 times that they came from 2004 to 14, 2 times that they came. Now NDA 2 times, right? When that particular regime actually lose the legitimacy of the people, they are voted out and somebody else, some other party or some other coalition comes in. Now you see from systems point of view, all these things are explained properly, right? So this is where the support comes. So this is where the problem is. You need to have a minimum support in the sense, that's why in constitutions it's written, right? 50 plus 1 simple majority. Or you want to make the amendment of the constitution, you need to have 2/3. Or if you have absolute majority means 50 plus 1 of present and voting. There is a difference between simple majority, absolute majority, 2/3 majority. You got it? You know the difference, right? Suppose it is easy to get the simple majority. Suppose if I say that out of 100 of the total house 100, only 20 people are there that day or 30 people are there. So simple majority means 16 people out of 30 more than enough because they are the one present. That is simple majority. But if I say absolute majority, I need to have 51. Then you have something known as 2/3 majority. Even in our constitution, if you see, if you want to actually amend on certain provisions of the basic structure of the constitution or certain hard provisions, you need to have these absolute this 2/3 majority plus 50 plus 1 numbers in terms of the number of states also have to vote, that legislatures also have to vote. Then only a particular provisions, for instance, you want to decide something on judiciary, right? Or something on presidential, or something on the basic political system you want to amend, or you want to change the whole constitution, you need this particular thing. Now you see, from support point of view, if you see, it makes a lot of sense why they kept like that, right? So then you have something known as through, that's what I already told you. The support depends on how demand is met. How, according to David Easton, allocation of values. A political system he defines as authoritative allocation of values. That is what? If a system is efficient in maintaining that, then a particular system keeps on getting the support. That's why Putin gets voted again and again and again. Of course, you can question the very electoral system, but he has been there now for more than 2 decades, or he is going to be 3 decades like that. Why? Because he's taking care, maybe for various reasons. Or in Syria, you can see, or in some countries, a particular person is there for long. That is because at least people were not finding any reason to revolt, right? Okay, this is what support is all about. So in simple, support is the energy that gives to the system, and it also gives the legitimacy because it is directly proportionate to the legitimacy. Support is directly proportionate to the legitimacy. And any system to survive, it need not necessarily have a absolute support. If it has a minimum support, it is more than enough. That's why Indian electoral system, if you see, certain parties get lot of seats in the parliament or legislature, but in terms of voting percentage, they get actually maybe few percentage more, or 2 or 3% more than the losing party. Of course, that has to do with the problem in the electoral system. But the point is, if you have this much minimum, it is enough. And if you see certain presidential elections, if you see a particular person gets 50% plus one, then then it doesn't matter. Those 49% were opposing that person. It doesn't matter, because according to this, if the minimum requirement is 50 plus 1, right? Okay. Then we'll just move on to what is known as output. So we saw input, right? Both demand and support. We will see output, and then we will come into the system. So we already saw this. Output is nothing but, according to systems theory, especially David Easton, output is nothing but how you give values. Values means not the, I already told you, values here doesn't mean your moral science value. No, not like that. Honesty, integrity, not that. Here values means what you need to survive, what you need to develop, okay, what you need to sustain yourself, what keeps you happy. All those things are values. So the output is nothing but the values are allocated by the authorities. It comes from the system. Basically, it's the output. So these are like this, right? So these are various outputs, in the sense that it could be in the form of laws or ordinances or oral decisions. It doesn't matter. And these outputs also basically in response to the inputs, but not necessarily it is always in response to. That's why outputs are not usually, or in general, we cannot say 100% outputs match inputs. Many times, this is where you need to connect with the system, the type of government also. Authoritarian regimes or communitarian regimes, right, or communist parties here means they need not to necessarily consult the people, right? That also applies to some of the democracies like India, but they don't need to consult people at all, right? Because they assume that this is what is people expecting, or this is what output should be. If output should be like this, then country may develop. Take the case of China. They have some system of getting to know from people that includes intelligence network also. You see famous intelligence networks like KGB, right? Or you have Chinese intelligence network, right? Even if you take IB has good intelligence network that actually looks at the political, what happened at the political level, what people think about it. Are there any riots? Are there any commotions? Are there any disturbances? They also keenly see. It's not that they see only security issues. No, more than 80% of the IB's energy goes into collecting political intelligence. Of course, that is also very important. But the thing is, you see how the system has ears on the ground through various mechanisms, right? So it need not that is also taken as input, but it need not necessarily, if we think that input means people actually give it in writing, right? Or people express through elections or through something else, right? It's not necessarily like that. It could be in any manner. But if you see, irrespective of the systems, it won't match. It could be ideal democracy. The inputs doesn't match output. Most of the time, the system thinks that it knows what to give it, right? And now, as I told you, right, it could be in any of these forms, right? And there are two categories of inputs. Outputs, sorry, the two categories of outputs, binding and non-binding, right? So the thing is, suppose if system says something, systems also could come in the form of binding nature. For instance, you say unlock or lock 1.0, lockdown 2.0, lockdown 3.0, unlock. 1.0, something like that. They comes as an output in the form of a decision, which makes you binding. There are certain things, for instance, tax laws, income tax laws or GST or whatever, those are also binding in nature. But there are certain things which are non-binding, says that you may follow like this, right? You may. But if you take traffic laws and things like that, it is binding. But they may say that you take your family once in a year outing somewhere, non-binding. Of course, nobody has done like that, but I'm generally giving us an example. There are many non-binding outputs also, which according to system theory is called as co-outputs. It is not exactly outputs, it is co-outputs, something like your co-curricular. And this is very important point. The output could, right? They may end up your modify your demands also, because output is coming. If it comes in response to your demands, then what happens? When output comes, you may drop the demand, or if you feel that the output was not fair enough, you may increase, right? You may say that this is not enough, I want more, right? I want more. That modification will come. Or you may say that no, this is not what I expected, this is what I expected. So that may modify your demand also. And support, of course, as I already told you when I was talking about support, that the output actually legitimizes or actually either increases or stresses the particular support. Suppose if demands are always met by the outputs, your support value increases. That's what I gave you the example of the regimes coming again and again, because the people or the system feel that not the system, the environment feels that this system delivers efficiently to us, so we will continue with this, right? That's why it enhances, kept on enhancing the legitimacy. So this output is very, very important, because end of the day, system is there to meet your demands in the form of outputs, right? So that is where it is. So what happens in the system inside? Let me quickly go through. I'll just open this and then I may stop there. Now we saw input side, we saw output side. So input had two things in terms of demands and supports. Then you have outputs, binding and non-binding. But all these depends on something happening in the system, right? Something happens in the system which we called as a black box, right? What happens exactly is what we need to see, because some of you will be entering the system and it's better that we know. And it all depends on what happens inside. The quality of the output depends on this, what happens inside. So this is how it is. You can see issue emergence number 1, agenda setting 2, alternate selection 3, enactment 4, implementation okay 5, and evaluation 6. And then it comes as an output, and then it goes right. And if there is anything feedback, then again it comes. This cycle continues. So what happens in the black box is, suppose if I have a black box inside the system, inputs come as an issue for me, right? It comes. Then what I do, I take all the inputs after filtering out or whatever. I take the inputs and see whether that is worth looking at. So I place it as a part of agenda, right? So there are various options that I give it, and I go for a best alternative out of that. And out of best alternative, I'll anyway come to the example. Out of best alternative, I will try and make policy out of it. Then I will see how to actually go and implement. Perhaps maybe I will actually give a trial or something I will do. That's why you could see this Janata curfew. When Janata curfew was successful, right? And they evaluated that country was, people were ready for a lockdown, then they actually enacted, right? So this is the overall loop: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is what happens in the black box. So, for example, you can say, for instance, you can take either Article 370 or NRC or whatever. For instance, let's take NRC, right? So there was an issue in the terms of migration, what to do with that. So you have various options. You have security measures, you have actually deporting measures, or you can tell them that um, make them to accept that you are not actually citizen, you better go back. That is the NRC behind. So these are the various options. So you have been implementing other things, security measures and other deporting measures, all those things. But NRC is something I thought that it was not implemented. It's been there for quite some time. I select that alternative and try and make a kind of policy on that and try and implement and see how it is, right? And evaluate it. And then I will actually give ultimately as a output, right? And then how it works, right? Anyway, I will come to feedback later. How it works comes as a feedback, and again, feedback becomes an input. Then again, I will modify my whatever I did it on NRC or 370 or even lockdown policies. Again, I will see, okay, what went wrong? This is where it went wrong. These are the options I made. These are the new options available. This is the best alternative. Then again, I'll give it as an output. This is what happens inside. This is known as policy stages of David Easton, where you have this many stages, right? Okay.